This uniform belonged to Helmut Canola. He was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Like him, thousands of witnesses were thrown into Nazi prisons and camps for what they believed. A small number compared with the millions exterminated by Nazi terror. Yet nearly 2,000 witnesses died, more than 250 by execution. From the start of the Nazi regime, this small Christian group were brutally assaulted, but not silenced. They let the world know that the Nazi killing machine was engulfing not only them, but Jews, Poles, and others. The history of Jehovah's Witnesses, how they stood firm in their beliefs, and how they spoke out, is a record few have heard about today. It is a story that must be told.
I'd like to welcome you to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. It is both a privilege and an honor to have you as our guests today, because your story is an extremely important one.
On September 29th, 1994, historians from Germany, Britain, and the United States spoke about Jehovah's Witnesses. Together with survivors and representatives of the Watchtower Society, they revealed remarkable details.
And they wouldn't utter the word Heil Hitler. And it's very intriguing to feel the social dissident character of that when you walk into a room and you hear the words Heil Hitler and somebody says good morning. Or you walk into a room and the meeting is concluded and you say Heil Hitler and somebody says Auf Wiedersehen, and that's an act of singular civic courage and of unimaginable human decency.
Dr. Detlef Garber and Wolf Brebeck are directors of concentration camp memorials in Germany. They explained why the stand of Jehovah's Witnesses was unique. Willy Pohl was one of more than 20 survivors present for the seminar. He and James Belecha represented the Watchtower Society. They explained the reasons for the bold stand taken by the witnesses. Even before the Nazis took power, Watchtower publications warned of the danger.
In 1929, this bold statement was published in the German edition of the Golden Age. National Socialism is a movement that is acting directly in the service of man's enemy, the devil.
Professor Christine King, Vice-Chancellor of Staffordshire University, analysed the moral battle waged between the witnesses and the Nazis.
And stand firm, indeed, the witnesses did, as we know, to death, and not a simple death, but a horrific death by torture. One of the SS guards said of witnesses singing hymns in the death cell, "I could run a steamroller over you lot and it wouldn't quiet you." They think that a steamroller will silence faith and integrity and courage and the family belief that Jehovah's Witnesses have. And of course it cannot under any circumstances. They spoke out from the beginning, they spoke out with one voice, and they spoke out with a tremendous courage.
Germany struggles to recover from its World War I wounds. Well known as Bibelforscher, or Bible students, before 1931, Jehovah's Witnesses offer comfort and hope, but also warn of rising militarism. They are a familiar sight on streets and doorsteps, distributing tremendous amounts of Bible literature.
And God's command to all such true Christians is that they must tell the truth as the people of goodwill.
In Magdeburg, at a watchtower plant called Bethel, 1 million copies of the magazine The Golden Age rolled off the presses each month. The Magdeburg factory turned out 2 million books and 5 million booklets each year. This publishing and preaching did not go unnoticed by the growing Nazi movement.
There was talk about Jehovah's Witnesses because of things that were repulsive to the National Socialists. They were talked about because they refused military service and because they did not give allegiance to the fatherland as a German ought to, according to the National Socialists.
The Nazis falsely branded Jehovah's Witnesses as communists, menaces to the state, conspirators with the Jews to take over the world. By 1933, the stage was set for battle. The seeds that set in motion the rise of Nazism were sown on the battlefields of World War I.
In 1914, the German armies, the French armies, the Russian armies, the English armies all went to war. And all of their church people proclaimed that God was on their side. Nothing did the church more harm than this mutually exclusive claim to have divine support. By 1918, the cynicism, the skepticism about the church's credibility was so great that the vast majority of those who served in the trenches came back thoroughly disillusioned and no longer willing to accept the moral authority of a church which had misled them so badly. These are the young men who emerged from the trenches, who 15 years later are the leading figures in the Nazi Party.
On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler comes to power. Appointed Chancellor by President von Hindenburg, hopes ran high for a strong new Germany.
The majority of people are inspired by propaganda or by the people around them. It's perhaps not out of wickedness, but they are just swept along by a river of propaganda.
The Reichstag building, the seat of the German parliament, burns. The Nazis immediately blame the communists, and Hitler pressures President von Hindenburg to issue an emergency decree. The Enabling Act soon follows. Hitler, now with dictatorial powers, suspends human rights. Anyone could be arrested and imprisoned without trial. The Nazis now have a weapon to silence their enemies. In one German state after another, the police shut down meetings of the witnesses and prohibit their door-to-door preaching. So, the witnesses launched a campaign to inform the German government that they were not subversives.
Right from the very beginning, the Jehovah's Witnesses were very clear in their position, their stance, and they kept their position of political neutrality. In the early days, there were attempts to explain to the authorities what this means, and that, in fact, it wasn't a political threat.
Representing the 25,000 witnesses in Germany, delegates from all over the country gather for a convention in Berlin to adopt a resolution.
In this declaration, we explained that we had absolutely no political goals, that our activity was purely religious, and that we wished to make use of the freedom of belief and of religion in accordance with the promise made in the party platform, and also by government officials, and that therefore this matter of partial bans should be investigated and they should be lifted.
The country was blanketed with more than 2 million copies of the Declaration. Konrad Franke shared in the distribution. He was arrested and sent to the Osthoven labor camp.
There was to be no place in this new Germany for Bible student ideas, for the religious teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Prussia issued a second ban of Jehovah's Witnesses. The police were ordered to shut them down again.
On June 28, here a band of 30 stormtroopers, Hitler's brown shirts, forced their way in and occupied the premises. A ban was declared. When this building was closed, we no longer had a central office, but were forced to go underground.
This is the last German issue of the Watchtower printed in Magdeburg. The presses fall silent. A few weeks later, the Nazis return. 25 truckloads of Bible literature are carted off to the Magdeburg city limits and burned.
Put in relative terms, the murder of 6 million Jews as a crime by the state, carried out with factory-like precision, was certainly an occurrence without equal in the history of mankind. But there was also something distinctive about the persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses. They were persecuted with very great severity and brutality. The goal was to destroy this religious group. There were to be no more witnesses in Germany.
From an early date, the witnesses are identified as a key enemy, partly because of their very public stance and their very public refusal to accept even the smallest elements of National Socialism which didn't fit their faith and their beliefs.
Hitler gave the people jobs. He restored their faith in the fatherland. He is hailed as their savior. But the witnesses could not give to a man what they believed belonged to God. Thus, a battle line was drawn over a simple greeting, Heil Hitler. Jehovah's Witnesses refused to say Heil Hitler because it meant salvation comes from Hitler. At his job in a steel mill, one witness faced this test.
I was the only one among 2,000 who did not raise my hand and did not return the German salute. Every day running the gauntlet, since I was required to give the German salute, and I simply said, "Good day."